The tape was supposed to be blank. For 35
wasn't
years,
an
it sat in a
accident.
federal
They
evidence
targeted
locker
the
collecting
shipment at
dust labeled
0300
audio no
hours.
content, filed away with the cold remains of a case that haunted an entire city. But on a Tuesday morning in 2025, when a forensic audio specialist named Dr. Sarah Chen pressed play on newly enhanced equipment, 3 seconds of sound crawled out of the static like a ghost clawing its way back from the grave. A low hum, the creak of a heavy door, and then, barely a whisper, a man's voice threading through the darkness. "Don't look at me." 3 seconds that would unravel everything. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Because to understand why those 3 seconds mattered, you need to go back to the night Vanessa Reed disappeared, October 17, 1990, when the fog rolled off San Francisco Bay so thick you could taste the salt and fear in the air. 23-year-old Vanessa was walking home from her journalism internship at the Bay Chronicle. Smart, ambitious, with honey brown hair she always wore in a ponytail and a smile that made sources trust her instantly. She was chasing a story, the kind that could make a career, the kind that could also get you killed. Her last phone call came at 9:47 p.m. Her roommate Jennifer would never forget the tremor in Vanessa's voice when she whispered into the payphone receiver, "I think someone's following me." "Where are you?" Jennifer had asked, heart already racing. "Near the—" Static, a sharp click, then nothing but the empty hum of a severed connection. Jennifer called the police at 9:52 p.m. By midnight, search teams were combing the Embarcadero. By dawn, they found her leather bag near Pier 39, contents scattered like breadcrumbs leading nowhere. Her notebook, filled with interview notes, was there. Her wallet, untouched. Her keys. But Vanessa Reed was gone, and there, gleaming against the wet pavement in the early morning light, lay a single pearl earring. Expensive, beautiful, completely out of place. The detective who found it was a 26-year-old FBI agent named Marcus Hale, so green he still creased his suits too sharply, and believed every case could be solved if you just worked hard enough. He picked up that earring with gloved hands, turning it over in the evidence bag, and felt something in his gut twist. Something was wrong about it. He just couldn't figure out what. They searched for weeks, dragged the bay, questioned hundreds. Vanessa's mother, Ellen Reed, appeared on the news every night, clutching her daughter's childhood photograph, begging for answers. The city held its breath. But bodies hidden well stay hidden, and killers who plan carefully leave no trail. The case went cold by Christmas, filed away, forgotten by everyone except the mothers, who never stop hoping, and the young agents who never stop wondering what they missed. Marcus Hale was one of those agents. Even as decades passed and he rose through the ranks, even as he solved other cases and earned commendations, Vanessa Reed's face stayed pinned to the corkboard in his mind. That pearl earring haunted his dreams. Because Marcus had learned something in his long career. Killers always make mistakes. Always. The perfect crime is a myth. You just have to find the flaw. Now, before we go further into the darkness of what really happened that October night, I need you to do something. If you're watching this because you love true crime, because you believe the dead deserve justice, because you want to see how one tiny oversight brought down a monster 35 years later, then subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell. Because when you do, the algorithm guides more of these forgotten stories to people who care, to people like you, who believe some voices should never be silenced. Comment below where you're watching from. Let me know if you've ever heard of the Vanessa Reed case, because her story was buried, hidden, almost erased from history. But truth has a way of surviving, doesn't it? Even when it's been suffocating in darkness for decades. Now here's what nobody knew in 1990. What the police didn't discover. What even Marcus Hale, despite his instincts screaming at him, couldn't prove. Vanessa Reed wasn't grabbed by some random predator lurking in the fog. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. Vanessa was targeted, hunted, silenced, because 3 days before she disappeared, she had conducted an interview that would have destroyed one of San Francisco's most powerful families. She had stumbled onto a secret so dangerous that the moment she started asking questions, her death warrant was signed. The man in the gray suit had been watching her for weeks. Her last diary entry, written in hurried script on October 16th, found years later buried in her mother's attic, never given to the police because Ellen Reed couldn't bear to read it, said this: If anything happens to me, look at the man in the gray suit. JR knows what I found. JR knows everything. I'm meeting him tomorrow night to get the evidence. If I'm right about this, it's bigger than anything the Chronicle has ever published. If I'm wrong, I'll look like a fool. But I don't think I'm wrong. I think I'm terrified. She was right to be terrified, because what Vanessa discovered in her investigation wasn't just corruption or fraud. It was a web that connected money, power, and murder. A web that stretched from the foggy piers of San Francisco to offshore accounts, from respected boardrooms to hidden cabins in the woods where screams got swallowed by redwood trees. And the pearl earring? The one the police assumed belonged to Vanessa? That was the killer's first mistake. A tiny, almost invisible error that would take 35 years and modern forensic technology to expose. But I'm getting ahead of the story again, because right now in 1990, as Marcus Hale stood on that pier holding an evidence bag and feeling the October fog seep into his bones, all he knew was that a young woman was missing, and something felt deeply, terribly wrong. He couldn't have known that he was standing less than 50 feet from where she took her last breath. He couldn't have known that the man responsible was watching him from a black sedan parked across the street, engine idling, wondering if this young agent might become a problem. And he definitely couldn't have known that he'd spend the next 35 years of his life chasing a ghost, until the ghost decided to speak. Marcus Hale was 71 years old when the past reached through time and grabbed him by the throat. He'd been retired for 6 years, living in a cabin outside Portland, Oregon, where the rain came down steady, and the silence was thick enough to forget the screams that still echoed in his memory. 32 years with the FBI. Hundreds of cases closed. Commendations stacked in a box he never opened. But retirement hadn't brought peace. It had just given him more time to think about the ones who got away. Vanessa Reed's face still lived in his nightmares. That pearl earring still glinted in the dark corners of his mind. It was a Thursday morning in March 2025 when his phone rang. Marcus was halfway through his second cup of coffee, staring out at the pine trees, when the call came from a number he hadn't seen in years. FBI headquarters, San Francisco field office. "Hale," he answered, voice rough from disuse. "Agent Hale, it's Special Agent Christina Morris. I'm sorry to bother you in retirement, but we have a situation. It's about the Reed case." Marcus's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. His heart, which had been beating slow and steady for 6 peaceful years, suddenly remembered how to race. "Vanessa Reed," his voice came out barely a whisper. "Yes, sir. We've been running a massive digitization project scanning all cold case evidence into our new database system. We found something in your original evidence boxes, something we think you need to see in person. Can you come to San Francisco?" Marcus was in his truck within the hour. The drive from Portland to San Francisco should have taken 10 hours. Marcus made it in 8, stopping only once for gas and a sandwich he didn't eat. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles went white. 35 years. 35 years of wondering, of that case sitting like a stone in his chest, and now what? What could they have possibly found after all this time? When he arrived at the FBI field office on Golden Gate Avenue, the building looked different. Sleeker, more modern, full of young agents who weren't even born when Vanessa Reed disappeared. Agent Morris met him in the lobby. She was maybe 35, sharp-eyed, with her hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun that reminded him painfully of how Vanessa used to wear hers. "Thank you for coming so quickly," Morris said, shaking his hand. "I know this must be difficult." "Just show me what you found," Marcus replied. She led him down to the evidence archives in the basement, where rows of boxes sat on metal shelves under fluorescent lights that hummed like trapped insects. Morris pulled out a file box labeled Reed, Vanessa, 1990, Case number 90, SF 2847. Marcus had packed this box himself in 1993, when the case officially went cold. His hands trembled as Morris opened it. Inside, crime scene photographs he'd memorized decades ago. Vanessa's leather bag, now cracked with age. Her notebook, pages yellowed. And there, in a small evidence bag, the pearl earring that had haunted him for 35 years. "We know about all of this," Marcus said, confused. "What's new?" Morris reached deeper into the box and pulled out something Marcus had forgotten existed. A small cassette tape in a clear evidence bag, labeled in his own faded handwriting. Audio tape found in V. Reed's bag, blank, no evidentiary value. This tape, Morris said carefully, was believed to be blank in 1990. Your notes say you played it on the available equipment and heard nothing. Is that correct? Yes, Marcus nodded. Vanessa was a journalist. She used voice recorders. We found this tape in her bag, but when we played it, there was nothing on it, just static. We assumed she hadn't used it yet or had recorded over it. Well, sir, Morris said, and something in her voice made the hair on Marcus's neck stand up. Technology has advanced considerably since 1990. We have audio enhancement capabilities now that can pull sound from what seems like pure silence. We can isolate frequencies, remove interference, detect patterns human ears can't hear. She held up the tape like it was made of glass. We ran this through our new system and we found something. Marcus couldn't breathe. The fluorescent light suddenly seemed too bright, the basement too small. What did you find? Morris led him to a computer workstation where another agent, younger, maybe 28, sat with headphones around his neck. This is Dr. James Chen, our forensic audio specialist. He's the one who made the discovery. Dr. Chen nodded nervously. Mr. Hale, I'm going to play you what we extracted from the tape. It's only 3 seconds long. The quality isn't perfect, but it's clearly audible. Are you ready? Before we continue, I need you to understand something. If you're invested in this story, if you want to know what that tape revealed, then don't just watch, engage. Leave a comment telling me what you think was on that recording. Share this video with someone who loves mysteries that span decades. Because when you interact with this content, when you comment and share, you're not just helping the algorithm, you're helping stories like Vanessa's reach the people who care about justice. The people who believe that no matter how much time passes, the truth matters. And trust me, what's on that tape will change everything you think you know about this case. Marcus sat down heavily in a chair. His hands were shaking. Play it. Dr. Chen clicked the mouse. Audio waveforms appeared on the screen, green lines dancing against black. He pressed play. At first, Marcus heard what he'd heard in 1990. Static. White noise, nothing. But then Dr. Chen adjusted something, and beneath the static, sounds began to emerge like shapes forming in fog. A low mechanical hum, steady, industrial. The creak of a heavy door, metal on metal, echoing slightly. And then, so faint it was almost swallowed by the interference, a man's voice. Whispering, urgent, terrified or threatening. Marcus couldn't tell which. 3 words that Marcus would hear in his sleep for the rest of his life. Don't look at me. The recording ended. Silence filled the basement. Marcus sat frozen, his mind racing, his heart hammering against his ribs. Because that voice, that whisper, meant Vanessa had been recording when she was taken. She'd captured her own abduction, maybe even her murder. For 35 years, the killer's voice had been sitting in an evidence box waiting. There's more, Agent Morris said quietly. Dr. Chen, show him the background analysis. Dr. Chen pulled up another screen. When I isolated the ambient sounds behind the voice, I found something else. A very specific audio signature. It took me 2 weeks to identify it, but I finally matched it. He pressed play again, and this time Marcus heard it clearly. A bell chime. Distant but distinct. A deep, resonant tone that rang twice before fading. That's not just any bell, Dr. Chen explained. That's a very specific brass bell imported from Amsterdam in 1889. There were only 3 of them in the United States. One was in Boston, one in Seattle, and one here in San Francisco. Marcus leaned forward. Where in San Francisco? Pier 39, Dr. Chen said. The old clock tower had this exact bell. It was removed during renovations in 1991, replaced with a digital system. The room tilted. Marcus gripped the edge of the desk. They'd searched the wrong location. In 1990, they'd focused on the street where Vanessa made her last call, blocks away from the pier. But she'd been taken near Pier 39, exactly where they'd found her bag the next morning. She'd been so close to where they were searching. So close. Agent Hale? Morris's voice seemed far away. Are you all right? Marcus looked up at her. And for the first time in 6 years of quiet retirement, he felt the old fire burning in his chest again. "We need to reopen this case," he said, "right now." The fog had lifted, but the ghosts remained. Marcus stood on Pier 39 3 days after hearing that tape, staring at the empty space where the clock tower used to stand. Tourists shuffled past him buying sourdough bread bowls and taking selfies with sea lions, completely unaware they were walking through what might have been Vanessa Reed's final moments. 35 years ago, this pier had been different. Quieter, darker, less renovated. The old warehouses that once lined the waterfront were mostly gone now, replaced by shops selling San Francisco sweatshirts and overpriced seafood. But if Marcus closed his eyes, he could almost see it. October 17th, 1990. Fog rolling in thick, a young woman running, terrified, toward what she thought was safety. The clock tower was right there, Agent Morris said, pointing to where a modern information kiosk now stood. According to the historical records, it was scheduled for demolition in early 1991. In October 1990, it was still standing but abandoned. The bells hadn't worked properly in years, but apparently they'd chime randomly when the wind hit them right. Marcus turned slowly, taking in the angles, the sight lines. So Vanessa runs to the pier. Someone's following her. She ducks near the old tower, maybe trying to hide. She has her voice recorder running, probably hoping to capture evidence of who's after her. And she does, Morris added grimly. She captures his voice, but she also captures her own death. Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Chen. "Found something else in her notebook. You need to see this." They drove back to the field office in silence, Marcus's mind churning through possibilities. The bell chime had given them location. The voice had given them proof someone else was there. But they still didn't have the most important thing. Identity. Who was the man who whispered, "Don't look at me"? Back in the evidence room, Dr. Chen had Vanessa's notebook spread across a table, pages protected by clear plastic sleeves. Morris had mentioned they'd reviewed it in 1990, but Marcus remembered it differently now. They'd skimmed it, looking for obvious clues, names, addresses. They hadn't treated it like the roadmap it actually was. "Look at the last 30 pages, Dr. Chen said, excitement barely contained in his voice. She wasn't just taking random notes. She was investigating something specific, something big. Marcus leaned over the pages. Vanessa's handwriting was neat, methodical, the work of a journalist trained to document everything. But as he read, his blood ran cold. The notes weren't about street crime or local politics, they were about money. Massive amounts of money moving through offshore accounts. Shell corporations with addresses in the Cayman Islands and Panama. And at the center of it all, one name appeared again and again, sometimes circled, sometimes underlined, sometimes just written in the margins like she was trying to remember it. Jonathan Rhodes. "Who's Jonathan Rhodes?" Morris asked, pulling out her phone to search. Marcus didn't need to search. The name hit him like a freight train. "He's a billionaire philanthropist, was a rising tech CEO back in 1990, made his fortune in early computer software. He's still alive. Still in San Francisco. He funds hospitals, libraries, politicians. He's untouchable." "Nobody's untouchable," Morris said, but her voice carried doubt. Marcus flipped through more pages. Vanessa had been meticulous. She'd documented meetings, phone calls, suspicious transactions. She'd even written down questions she wanted to ask. Why are donations to children's charities being routed through offshore accounts? What is Rhodes hiding about the 1988 Seattle acquisition? Who is JR really working for? That last question made Marcus stop. JR, he muttered. Jonathan Rhodes. She was using his initials. Dr. Chen nodded eagerly. Keep reading. Look at the entry from October 14th, 3 days before she disappeared. Marcus found the page. The handwriting was shakier here, less controlled. I met with the source today. He's scared. Says JR knows people are asking questions. The offshore accounts aren't just tax evasion. They're connected to something darker. Arms dealing, human trafficking. He wouldn't say directly, but he kept saying, if this gets out, powerful people go to prison. He wants me to meet him again on the 17th. Says he'll bring documents, real proof. But he also said something that terrified me. Be careful. Rhodes doesn't let loose ends survive. The room went silent. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to stop humming. She was murdered because she was investigating Jonathan Rhodes, Morris said slowly. Like saying it out loud made it real. She found something that could destroy him, and he had her killed. Marcus's jaw clenched. We need more than a notebook. Rhodes has lawyers who could bury us in motions for years. We need physical evidence. We need... The pearl earring, Dr. Chen interrupted. I've been thinking about that earring since you mentioned it haunted you. You said something felt wrong about it? Marcus nodded. Vanessa wasn't wealthy. She was an intern surviving on ramen and hope. That earring was real pearl, expensive. It never made sense that she'd own something like that. What if she didn't? Morris's eyes widened. What if the killer dropped it? The thought had occurred to Marcus before, decades ago, but he dismissed it. Evidence at crime scenes usually belonged to victims. But now, with everything they were learning, the possibility crystallized into probability. We need to test it, Marcus said. DNA, pollen analysis, anything microscopic that might tell us where it came from or who handled it. Now listen, if you're still watching, if this case has grabbed hold of you the way it grabbed hold of me, then you need to do something. Comment below and tell me, do you think Jonathan Rhodes killed Vanessa himself? Or did he have someone else do it? Because this is where the investigation splits into two paths, and both of them lead somewhere dark. Share this video with someone who loves unsolved mysteries, because the more people who know Vanessa's name, the harder it becomes to bury her story again. The algorithm works when you work with it, so engage, share, and let's make sure justice doesn't get forgotten a second time. Dr. Chen carefully removed the pearl earring from its evidence bag and placed it under a high-powered microscope. I'll need to send this to the lab for full analysis, but let me just check for any obvious particulates first. He adjusted the focus, peering through the lens. Then he went very still. What? Marcus demanded. What do you see? Dr. Chen looked up, his face pale. There's organic material embedded in the metal setting. Plant material. Microscopic, but definitely there. What kind of plant material? I'd need a botanist to confirm. But it looks like pollen. Very specific pollen. He took several photographs through the microscope, then pulled up a database on his computer. After a few minutes of comparison, he turned the screen toward Marcus and Morris. Sequoia sempervirens, he read. Coast redwood. But not the common variety you'd find in parks. This particular pollen signature matches old-growth redwoods, the kind found in protected private forests. Morris pulled up a map on her tablet. Where would someone find private old-growth redwood forests near? San Francisco? The search took less than a minute. When the results appeared, all three of them stared at the screen in stunned silence. There were only two private estates in the San Francisco area with documented old-growth redwood forests. One belonged to a tech consortium that didn't exist in 1990. The other belonged to Jonathan Rhodes. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. That old detective instinct. The one that knew when puzzle pieces were finally clicking into place. Vanessa went there, he said quietly. She went to Rhodes's estate. Maybe for that meeting with her source. Maybe she thought she'd be safe on his property. Or maybe she was invited under false pretenses. But she was there. And that's where he killed her. We still can't prove it, Morris cautioned. Pollen on an earring isn't enough for an arrest warrant. Especially not against someone like Rhodes. Marcus turned away from the microscope, his mind already 3 steps ahead. Then we need to go to that estate. We need to find where he took her, because if Vanessa died there, there's evidence. Bodies leave traces. Blood soaks into wood. Bones don't just disappear. That estate is private property, Morris warned. We'd need probable cause for a warrant. Then let's find it, Marcus said, and the old fire in his voice made both younger agents straighten up. The hunt had begun again, and this time Marcus wasn't going to let the killer slip away. The house on Maple Street hadn't changed in 35 years. Same white shutters, same rose bushes in the front yard, same porch swing where Vanessa Reed used to sit on summer evenings, writing in her journal and dreaming of Pulitzer Prizes. Marcus stood on the sidewalk staring at it, working up the courage to knock on a door he'd knocked on 100 times before. Ellen Reed was 79 now. The last time Marcus had seen her was at a vigil in 2015, 25 years after Vanessa disappeared. She'd looked at him with those sad, hollow eyes and said, "You never found her, did you?" He'd shaken his head, unable to speak around the guilt lodged in his throat. Now he was back, with hope, with terrible, fragile hope. He knocked. The woman who answered the door had aged like a photograph left too long in sunlight. Faded, delicate, but still recognizably herself. Ellen Reed's hair was completely white now, pulled back in the same style she'd always worn. When she saw Marcus standing on her porch, her hand flew to her mouth. "Marcus," she whispered, "why are you here? Did you find her?" "May I come in, Ellen?" She stepped back wordlessly, and Marcus entered the house that grief had preserved like a museum. Vanessa's high school graduation photo still hung in the hallway. Her journalism award still lined the mantel. The house smelled like lavender and loss. They sat in the living room where Marcus had sat dozens of times before, asking questions that led nowhere, watching a mother's hope die by degrees. "We've reopened Vanessa's case," Marcus said gently. "New technology allowed us to analyze old evidence. We found something, Ellen, something important." Her hands trembled in her lap. "Tell me." He explained about the tape, about the voice, about the bell that placed Vanessa at Pier 39. He watched Ellen's face cycle through emotions. Shock, pain, a flicker of something that might have been relief. At least now they knew she hadn't run away. At least now they knew she'd fought. "There's something else," Marcus continued carefully. "We believe Vanessa was investigating someone powerful. Someone named Jonathan Rhodes. Does that name mean anything to you?" Ellen's eyes went distant. "The philanthropist? The one who built the new children's wing at General Hospital?" "Yes. We found evidence that Vanessa was looking into his business dealings. Did she ever mention him to you?" Ellen shook her head slowly, then stopped. "Wait, there was something. After she died, after she disappeared, I was going through her things. Trying to find, I don't know what I was trying to find. Answers, maybe. Or just pieces of her." Her voice cracked. "I found her diary. Her private diary. The one she kept hidden in her closet. I couldn't bring myself to read it then. It felt like a violation, you know? My daughter was gone. And reading her private thoughts felt like losing her all over again." Marcus's heart hammered. "Do you still have it?" "I kept everything," Ellen whispered. "Everything she touched. I couldn't let go." She stood on shaky legs and led Marcus upstairs to what had been Vanessa's bedroom. It looked exactly as it must have in 1990, posters of her, favorite bands on the walls, books stacked on the desk, a twin bed with a faded purple comforter, a shrine to a girl who never got to become the woman she was meant to be. Ellen opened the closet and pulled down a shoebox from the top shelf. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper like something precious, was a small leather-bound diary with a brass lock that had been broken open. "I tried to read it after the police closed the case," Ellen said, tears streaming down her face. "I thought maybe there'd be something in here that would tell me why. But I got through 3 pages and couldn't continue. The pain was too much. I put it away and never looked at it again." She handed the diary to Marcus with trembling hands. "Find out what happened to my baby. Please, I'm 79 years old, Marcus. I don't have much time left. I need to know before I die. If you're watching this and you have a mother who's still alive, call her. Tell her you love her. Because Ellen Reed has been waiting 35 years for a phone call that will never come. And that kind of pain doesn't fade. It just learns to breathe quietly in the corner of your heart. Comment below if this story is touching you. If you believe families like Ellen's deserve closure, share this video so more people remember that behind every cold case is a person who was loved, who mattered, who deserved better. The algorithm only works if you work with it, so engage. And let's make sure Vanessa's voice isn't silenced again." Marcus held the diary carefully, reverently. "I promise you, Ellen, whatever it takes." Back at his hotel room that night, Marcus sat at the small desk with the diary in front of him and a glass of whiskey he wouldn't drink. His hands shook as he opened the cover. Vanessa's handwriting was youthful, energetic, full of the enthusiasm of someone who believed the world was waiting to be changed. The early entries were mundane. Complaints about her editor, excitement about her first byline, notes about sources for various stories. But as Marcus flipped through the pages, the tone shifted. Around late September 1990, the entries became shorter, more guarded, and then he found it. October 2nd, 1990, 15 days before she disappeared. I think I'm onto something huge. I can't write the details. Here, too dangerous if someone finds this, but JR isn't who everyone thinks he is. The charity work, the donations, the public persona, it's all a mask. I met with someone today who used to work for him. They told me things that made my blood run cold. If even half of it is true, this could be the biggest story of the decade. But I'm scared. Really scared. The source kept saying, be careful. He has eyes everywhere. He doesn't forgive. I don't scare easily. But something about the way they said it. Marcus's pulse quickened. He turned the page. October 9th. Got another anonymous letter today. Fourth one this week. Just 2 words written in block letters. Stop digging. How do they know what I'm investigating? Have they been following me? Watching my apartment? I told myself I'm being paranoid. But Jennifer noticed a black car parked across the street 3 nights in a row. Same car, engine running. When she went outside to check, it drove away. This is getting real. This is getting dangerous. But if I stop now, if I let them scare me off, then they win. And the truth stays buried. October 14th. Met with the source again today. He's terrified. Kept looking over his shoulder the whole time. He says JR found out people are asking questions about the offshore accounts. Says there are documents, real evidence that prove everything. Wire transfers, fake charity receipts, names of politicians who've been paid off. He has copies hidden somewhere safe. He's going to bring them to me on October 17th, late evening. Says we have to meet on the estate because that's the only place JR's security won't be suspicious about him accessing the files. I don't like it. Meeting on JR's property feels like walking into the lion's den. But this is it. This is the evidence I need. If I don't take this chance, I might never get another one. The entry ended there, but there was more written below in shakier handwriting, like it had been added later. If you're reading this, if something happened to me, look at the man in the gray suit. His name starts with J and ends with betrayal. The initials are JR, and he's hiding in plain sight behind charity galas and political donations. If I don't come back from this meeting, you'll know why. Tell my mother I love her. Tell her I wasn't running toward danger. I was running toward truth. Marcus closed the diary and sat in silence, staring at the hotel room wall. Vanessa had known. She'd known she was walking into danger on October 17th. She documented it, left a trail of breadcrumbs in case she didn't make it back. She'd gone to Jonathan Rhodes's estate that night. She'd walked right into the hands of her killer, and the man in the gray suit had been waiting. Marcus picked up his phone and called Agent Morris. She answered on the second ring. We need to talk to Rhodes's employees, Marcus said, his voice hard as iron. Anyone who worked at that estate in 1990. Someone saw something. Someone knows something, and we're going to find them. It's 11 p.m., Morris protested sleepily. Then we start first thing tomorrow, because Vanessa Reed left us a map to her own murder, and I'll be damned if we don't follow it. He hung up and stared at the diary again, at the handwriting of a 23-year-old woman who'd been brave enough to chase the truth even when the truth had teeth. I'm coming for him, Vanessa, Marcus whispered to the empty room. I promise you, I'm coming. The coffee shop was nearly empty when Marcus and Agent Morris met the woman who would crack the case wide open. Her name was Rosa Delgado, and she'd worked as a housekeeper at the Rhodes estate from 1987 to 1993. Finding her had taken 3 days of digging through old employment records, tracking down forwarding addresses, and making calls to people who'd rather forget they ever knew Jonathan Rhodes. When Marcus finally reached her by phone, there had been a long silence before she said, I wondered when someone would finally come asking questions. Now she sat across from them in a corner booth, 72 years old with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. Her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. I need you to understand something before I tell you what I know, Rosa said quietly. I signed a non-disclosure agreement when I left that job. Mr. Rhodes paid me very well to keep quiet about what went on in that house. If I break that agreement, I could lose everything. Mrs. Delgado, Marcus leaned forward, keeping his voice gentle but urgent. A young woman named Vanessa Reed disappeared in October 1990. We have evidence suggesting she was at the Rhodes estate the night she vanished. If you know anything at all, it could help us find out what happened to her. Rosa's hands tightened around the teacup. The girl with the brown hair? The one who came asking questions? The air in the coffee shop suddenly felt too thin. Morris pulled out her phone and showed Rosa a photo of Vanessa. Is this her? Rosa's eyes filled with tears. Yes, I saw her. October 17th, 1990. I remember because it was my daughter's birthday, and I wanted to leave early. But Mr. Rhodes said I had to stay late that night, said there was going to be an important meeting and he needed the study prepared. What time did you see Vanessa? Marcus asked, his heart pounding. Around 8:30 in the evening. I was upstairs in the main house when I looked out the window and saw a young woman walking up the drive toward the guest cottage. She was carrying a bag, walking quickly, looking nervous. I remember thinking it was odd because Mr. Rhodes usually had his business meetings in the main house, not the cottage. Guest cottage? Morris was taking notes rapidly. Where was this cottage? On the far edge of the property near the old-growth redwood forest. Maybe half a mile from the main house. It was quiet out there, private. Mr. Rhodes sometimes used it for sensitive meetings. The way she said sensitive made Marcus's skin crawl. Did you see what happened to her? Marcus pressed. Rosa shook her head. No. Mr. Rhodes told me to go home around 9 o'clock. He was very insistent that I leave. But as I was walking to my car, I saw something that's haunted me for 35 years. She paused, her face going pale. Marcus waited, barely breathing. There was a man standing outside the cottage, just standing there in the shadows, watching. He was wearing a gray suit. I remember because it seemed strange to wear such formal clothes out in the woods, and he was smoking a cigarette, the glow of it like a firefly in the dark. The man in the gray suit. Vanessa's diary entry echoed in Marcus's mind. Did you recognize him? Morris asked. That's the thing, Rosa whispered, leaning closer. That's what I've never told anyone because I signed that agreement, because I was afraid, because I didn't want to believe it. But yes, I recognized him. It was Mr. Rhodes, Jonathan Rhodes himself, standing outside that cottage, waiting. The revelation hung in the air like smoke. Marcus felt his pulse hammering in his temples. But there's something else, Rosa continued, her voice dropping even lower. Something most people don't know. Mr. Rhodes had a brother, Julian. Nobody talked about him because he was troubled, mentally unstable, violent sometimes. The family kept him hidden away on the estate in a cabin even deeper in the woods. I only saw him a handful of times in 6 years, but when I did, she shuddered. He scared me. The way he looked at people, like they weren't quite real to him. Marcus exchanged glances with Morris. A brother, a secret brother hidden away on the property. Was Julian at the estate that night? Marcus asked. I don't know, Rosa admitted. But I do know that after that night, after that girl disappeared, things changed. Mr. Rhodes became paranoid. He installed new security cameras. He fired half the staff and made the rest of us sign new NDAs with bigger payouts and scarier legal language. And Julian, I never saw Julian again after that month. There were rumors he'd been sent to a facility somewhere, but nobody would say for sure. Before you continue watching, I need you to understand how important your engagement is. Right now, we're uncovering a conspiracy that was buried for 35 years. A powerful man used his money and influence to silence anyone who might tell the truth. But you can help make sure Vanessa's story doesn't get buried again. Comment below. Tell me what you think happened in that cottage. Share this video with someone who cares about justice. Hit that subscribe button because when you do, you're not just supporting this channel. You're standing up and saying that truth matters, that victims matter, that no amount of money or power should be able to erase a human life. The algorithm amplifies what we collectively care about. So show that you care. Mrs. Delgado, Marcus said carefully, would you be willing to testify to what you saw that night? Rosa's hands trembled. If I testify, I'll lose the pension money Mr. Rhodes has been paying me all these years. That money keeps me alive, keeps a roof over my head. I understand, Marcus said gently. But a mother named Ellen Reed has been waiting 35 years to know what happened to her daughter. And right now, you're the only person who can help us get her those answers. Tears rolled down Rosa's weathered cheeks. That poor woman. That poor mother. She was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll testify. Money isn't worth carrying this guilt to my grave. I should have come forward years ago. Maybe if I had... You're coming forward now, Marcus said firmly. That's what matters. They spent another hour taking Rosa's detailed statement, getting everything documented. When they finally left the coffee shop, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in decades, the sensation of walls crumbling, of a case finally breaking open. "We have an eyewitness placing Vanessa at the estate," Morris said as they walked to the car. "We have the diary entries. We have the pollen evidence. We might actually have enough for a warrant." "Not yet," Marcus said. "Rhodes will have lawyers who'll tear apart any warrant based on 35-year-old testimony from a former employee. We need physical evidence. We need to find that cottage. It's private property. We can't just walk onto his estate." Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her. "The property records are public, right? And satellite imagery is public. We can at least figure out where that cottage is. Then we find a judge who's willing to issue a warrant based on everything we have." Morris pulled out her tablet and started searching. Within minutes, they had satellite images of the Rhodes estate, 300 acres of prime California land, most of it old-growth forest, with the main house, several outbuildings, and there, on the eastern edge of the property, a small structure barely visible through the tree cover, the cottage. "That's where she died," Marcus said quietly, staring at the image. "I can feel it." His phone rang. It was Dr. Chen from the FBI lab. "Agent Hale? I have results from the pearl earring analysis. You're not going to believe this." "Tell me," Marcus said. "The pollen we found isn't just from any redwood tree. It's from a specific genetic lineage, old-growth trees that are at least 200 years old. There are maybe 6 places in California that have this specific pollen signature. One of them is the Rhodes estate. But here's the thing that's really interesting. We also found microscopic traces of human blood on the earring post. It's degraded after 35 years, but we were able to extract partial DNA." Marcus's heart stopped. "Whose DNA?" "We ran it through our databases. No match to Vanessa Reed. No match to anyone in the system, actually. But it's definitely human blood, which means whoever wore this earring was bleeding," Marcus finished. "Someone was bleeding when they wore this earring, or when they lost it." "Exactly," Dr. Chen confirmed. "And there's one more thing. The blood type is AB negative. That's only present in about 1% of the population." Marcus looked at Morris. "Can we get Jonathan Rhodes's medical records?" "Not without a warrant," she said. "But his brother Julian, if he was institutionalized or treated for mental health issues, there might be records we can access." "Find them," Marcus ordered. "Find everything you can on Julian Rhodes, because I think we've been looking at this wrong. Jonathan Rhodes might have orchestrated Vanessa's murder, but I don't think he was the one who killed her." "You think it was the brother?" Morris said. Marcus nodded grimly. "I think Jonathan sent Julian to do his dirty work, and then he made Julian disappear so he couldn't talk." The pieces were falling into place. But the picture they formed was darker than Marcus had imagined. The psychiatric hospital records arrived by secure courier on a gray Tuesday morning, sealed in a manila envelope marked "Confidential." Agent Morris spread the papers across the conference table in the FBI field office, while Marcus stood at the window, watching rain streak down the glass. He hadn't slept in 2 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Vanessa Reed walking through dark woods toward a cottage where death waited in a gray suit. "Julian Marcus Rhodes," Morris read aloud from the file. "Born April 3, 1961. Diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia at age 19. Multiple hospitalizations between 1980 and 1989. History of violent outbursts, dissociative episodes, and extreme paranoia. Medical records indicate he believed people were trying to steal his identity by looking at him directly." Marcus turned from the window. "Say that last part again." "He believed people were trying to steal his identity by looking at him. According to the psychiatric notes, he would become violently agitated if anyone made direct eye contact. His therapist wrote that Julian often covered mirrors in his living space and would say things like, 'Don't look at me,' or 'Stop stealing my face,' when confronted." The words from the tape echoed in Marcus's mind. "Don't look at me." Not a threat. A plea. The terrified words of a mentally ill man. "What else does it say?" Marcus asked, his voice tight. Morris flipped through more pages. "Released to family care in 1989 with the stipulation that he continue medication and outpatient therapy. The releasing physician, noted concerns about the family's ability to provide adequate supervision, but Jonathan Rhodes signed affidavits guaranteeing Julian would receive proper care. After that, the medical trail goes cold. No therapy sessions logged, no prescription refills. It's like he vanished. Because Jonathan kept him isolated on the estate, Marcus said. Away from doctors, away from medication, away from anyone who might report what was happening to him. He turned his brother into a weapon. Dr. Chen entered the conference room carrying a laptop and looking like he hadn't slept either. I've been going through historical records of the Rhodes family. You need to see this. He opened the laptop and pulled up a newspaper article from 1989. Jonathan Rhodes's company, TechVision Systems, was under investigation by the SEC for securities fraud. The investigation was suddenly dropped in early 1990 after a key witness recanted their testimony. Let me guess, Marcus said. The witness died mysteriously? No. The witness survived but left the country immediately after. However, I found something else. Chen pulled up another document. Vanessa Reed wrote a story for her college newspaper in 1988 about corporate corruption. It was a small piece, barely noticed, but it mentioned TechVision Systems and raised questions about their accounting practices. It never went anywhere because she was just a student, but Jonathan Rhodes knew who she was, Morris finished. Even before she started investigating him professionally, she'd been on his radar for years. Marcus felt sick. So when she started digging into the offshore accounts in 1990, asking questions about his business dealings, he knew exactly who she was and what she was capable of uncovering. He couldn't just scare her off. He had to eliminate her. But he didn't do it himself, Morris said. He used Julian, his sick brother who wasn't taking medication, who was unstable, who could be manipulated. And if anything went wrong, Marcus added bitterly, Julian would take the fall. The mentally ill brother who snapped. Jonathan would walk away clean, playing the role of the grieving family member who tried his best but couldn't control his troubled sibling. Chen pulled up one final document. I requested Julian's blood type from his medical records, AB negative. The same blood type found on the pearl earring. The same blood type present in only 1% of the population. It was Julian's earring, Marcus said quietly. He wore it, lost it at the scene. But why would a man be wearing a pearl earring? Because it wasn't his, Morris said suddenly, her eyes widening. Look at the photograph in the psychiatric file, Julian's photo from 1989. Chen zoomed in on a black and white intake photo clipped to the medical records. Julian Rhodes stared at the camera with hollow eyes, his face gaunt, his expression vacant. And there, glinting in his left ear, was a small earring. He wore earrings, Chen breathed. It was probably a nervous habit or part of his condition. The records mention he had obsessive-compulsive tendencies. So Julian wore the earring to the cottage that night. Marcus pieced it together. During the struggle with Vanessa, it came loose, fell on the ground. He didn't notice because he was in the middle of committing murder, and it got left behind with Vanessa's bag near the pier, probably after Jonathan moved everything to stage the scene. Now listen carefully, because this is where the conspiracy gets deeper and the truth gets uglier. If you're following this story, if you want to see a powerful man finally face justice, then you need to engage right now. Comment and tell me. Do you think Jonathan Rhodes will ever stand trial? Or is he too rich and connected to face consequences? Share this video because the more people who know Vanessa's story, the harder it becomes to bury it again. Subscribe to this channel because we're diving into cases where justice was delayed but never forgotten. The algorithm rewards engagement. So engage. Make some noise. Let the world know that Vanessa Reed mattered. We still have a problem, Morris said, pulling Marcus back to the present. Julian is the one who physically killed Vanessa, but we don't know where he is. If he's dead, we can't question him. And without Julian's testimony, proving Jonathan's involvement becomes much harder. Marcus picked up his phone. Then we find Julian, or we find proof of what happened to him. How? Chen asked. Rosa Delgado said she never saw Julian after October 1990. Jonathan claimed he was sent to a facility, but there are no records of that, which means either Julian is still alive somewhere, or Jonathan killed him too, Morris finished grimly. Got rid of the witness, the one person who could implicate him. We need to search that estate, Marcus said. The cottage where Vanessa was killed and anywhere else Julian might have been kept. If Julian died on that property, there's evidence. There has to be. Morris shook her head. We still don't have enough for a warrant. Everything we have is circumstantial. Good circumstantial evidence, but any lawyer worth their retainer could challenge it. Marcus's jaw tightened. Then we find one more piece, one more thread we can pull that unravels everything. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I have information about the Rhodes case, can't talk on phone. Meet me at Pier 39 tonight at 9 p.m., come alone. I worked at the estate. I know where the bodies are buried. Marcus showed the text to Morris and Chen. Their faces went pale. It could be a trap, Morris warned. Rhodes might know we're investigating. This could be an attempt to silence you the way he silenced Vanessa. Or it could be someone who's been carrying guilt for 35 years and is finally ready to talk, Marcus countered. Either way, I have to go. Not alone, Morris said firmly. I'll be there plainclothes keeping watch. If anything happens, Marcus interrupted. You make sure Jonathan Rhodes doesn't get away with this, promise me. Morris hesitated, then nodded. I promise. That night, Marcus stood on Pier 39 in almost the exact spot where Vanessa's bag had been found 35 years earlier. The fog rolled in thick, just like it had that October night in 1990. Tourists had long since gone home. The shops were dark. The sea lions barked distantly from their docks. Marcus checked his watch. 9:04 p.m. Whoever sent the text was late. Then he heard footsteps behind him. Slow, deliberate echoing on the wooden planks. Marcus turned. A figure emerged from the fog, walking toward him with a strange, shuffling gait. As the person came closer, Marcus saw it was a man in his 60s, rail-thin, with haunted eyes and trembling hands. The man stopped 10 feet away and stared at Marcus with an expression of absolute terror and desperate hope. My name is Julian Rhodes, the man whispered, his voice cracked from years of disuse. And I'm here to confess to the murder of Vanessa Reed. The fog swirled between them. Behind Marcus, hidden in the shadows, Agent Morris spoke urgently into her radio, calling for backup. The ghost had come back to life, and he was ready to talk. Julian Rhodes stood shaking in the fog like a man who'd crawled out of his own grave. Marcus didn't move. Didn't speak. His hand hovered near his phone where Agent Morris was listening to every word through an open line. Backup was 3 minutes away, but 3 minutes could be a lifetime when facing a confessed killer who'd been hiding for 35 years. You're Julian Rhodes, Marcus said carefully, keeping his voice calm. Where have you been? Hiding, Julian whispered. His eyes darted around the pier, never settling on Marcus's face. True to his condition, he couldn't maintain eye contact. Hiding from him. Hiding from what I did. Hiding from the faces I see every time I close my eyes. From who? Who have you been hiding from? My brother. Julian's voice cracked. Jonathan. He said he'd kill me if I ever talked. Said he'd finish what he started. But I'm dying anyway. Cancer. The doctors gave me 3 months, so I don't care anymore what he does to me. I need to tell the truth before I meet God. Marcus's pulse hammered. This was it. The confession they needed. But he had to be careful. One wrong word and Julian might bolt back into the fog. Tell me what happened on October 17th, 1990, Marcus said gently. Tell me about Vanessa Reed. Julian's whole body trembled. The girl with the brown hair, the journalist. She was so young, so alive. And his voice broke into a sob. I killed her. I put my hands around her throat and I squeezed until she stopped moving. I watched the light go out of her eyes. I'm a monster. I'm a monster. Why? Marcus asked. Why did you kill her? Because Jonathan told me to. Julian's words came faster now, desperate, like he'd been holding them back for decades and they were finally bursting free. He said she was going to destroy our family. Said she was going to publish lies about us, ruin everything we'd built. He said if I loved him, if I wanted to stay at the estate, if I didn't want to go back to the hospital, I had to help him. Had to make her disappear. Gave me money and sent me to a cabin in Montana under a fake name. Told me if I ever contacted anyone, if I ever came back to San Francisco, he'd tell the police I acted alone, that I was the crazy brother who went off his medication and killed a girl. He'd say he had no idea that he was protecting me out of family loyalty. He had it all planned. But you kept one thing, Marcus said, remembering the evidence. The pearl earring. You wore pearl earrings. You lost one at the scene. Julian's hand went to his ear, touching where the piercing had long since closed. I didn't realize it was gone until later. Jonathan was furious, said I'd left evidence behind, but by then the police had already found it near her bag. He moved her bag from the cottage to the pier to make it look like she was grabbed there. He thought the earring would just look like hers. He didn't know. Julian's voice faded.
Didn't know what?
Didn't know I'd bled on it. I was pulling at my ears during the murder, nervous habit, ripped the piercing, got blood on the earring before it fell. Julian looked directly at Marcus for the first time, his eyes filled with anguish. That's what you found, isn't it? My blood. That's how you knew. That's how you... Yes, Marcus confirmed. We found your blood on the earring. We traced the pollen to the estate. We talked to Rosa Delgado. Julian nodded. Rosa. She saw me that night. I knew she saw me. Jonathan paid her to stay quiet. He paid everyone to stay quiet. Julian, Marcus said carefully, I need you to take us to where you buried Vanessa. I need you to show us the exact location. Can you do that? Yes, Julian whispered. But Jonathan can't know. If he finds out I'm here, if he knows I'm talking... He's not going to hurt you, Marcus promised. I have FBI agents surrounding this pier right now. You're under our protection, but I need you to trust me. I need you to help me bring your brother to justice. Julian was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the dark water. He always said I was the broken one, the damaged one, the one who needed to be hidden away. But he was the real monster, wasn't he? I was just his weapon. Yes, Marcus said softly. He used you, manipulated you, made you believe you had no choice. I did have a choice, Julian said, tears streaming down his face. Every day for 35 years I've known I had a choice. I chose wrong. I chose to be a coward. I chose to save myself instead of telling the truth. And that girl, Vanessa, she died because of my cowardice. Footsteps echoed on the pier. Agent Morris emerged from the fog with 4 other agents, all with their weapons drawn but not pointed. Julian raised his hands slowly. I'm not going to run. I'm ready to face what I've done. Just promise me one thing. What? Marcus asked. Promise me you'll arrest Jonathan too. Promise me he won't get away with this. Promise me Vanessa's death won't be blamed entirely on the crazy brother, while the puppet master walks free. Marcus stepped forward and looked Julian Rhodes in the eye. I promise you we're going after your brother with everything we have, and when we're done, the whole world will know what Jonathan Rhodes really is. Julian nodded and held out his wrists for the handcuffs. As Agent Morris read him his rights, Julian kept whispering the same words over and over like a prayer. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Marcus pulled out his phone and made the call he'd been waiting 35 years to make. Ellen, he said when Vanessa's mother answered. We found her. And we know what happened. We're bringing her home. On the other end of the line, an old woman who'd waited a lifetime finally began to cry tears that weren't made of grief alone. They were made of closure, of justice, of love that had never stopped even after 35 years of silence. The fog began to lift off San Francisco Bay, and somewhere in the darkness, Marcus imagined Vanessa Reed could finally rest. But the hunt wasn't over yet. The sun was rising over the Rhodes estate when the FBI convoy rolled through the iron gates. Marcus sat in the lead vehicle, watching the sprawling mansion come into view through morning mist that clung to the old-growth redwoods like smoke. Somewhere on this 300-acre property, Vanessa Reed had been buried for 35 years. And somewhere in that mansion, Jonathan Rhodes was about to face everything he'd tried so desperately to bury with her. Agent Morris sat beside Marcus, checking her service weapon for the 3rd time. Behind them, forensic teams and agents in tactical gear prepared for what would be the most significant arrest of any of their careers. Julian Rhodes was already in custody, his confession recorded and legally binding. Search warrants had been issued. The walls were finally closing in. He knows we're coming, Morris said quietly. His lawyers probably called the moment Julian walked onto that pier. Good, Marcus replied. Let him know. Let him feel what Vanessa felt, that moment when you realize there's nowhere left to run. The vehicle stopped in front of the mansion's grand entrance. Marcus stepped out into the cool morning air, his credentials already in hand. Before they could reach the door, it opened. Jonathan Rhodes stood in the doorway, 73 years old but still carrying himself with the commanding presence that had built an empire. Silver hair perfectly combed. Expensive suit immaculate. Eyes cold as winter. "Agent Hale," Jonathan said with a slight smile that didn't reach those eyes. "I've been expecting you, though I must say showing up with an army seems excessive for a social call." "Jonathan Rhodes." Agent Morris stepped forward, her voice formal and unwavering. "We have a warrant to search this property in connection with the 1990 disappearance and murder of Vanessa Reed. We also have a warrant for your arrest on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and accessory to murder." Jonathan's smile never faltered. "How dramatic. I assume my brother has been telling stories." Julian always had a vivid imagination, especially when he stopped taking his medication. Paranoid schizophrenia, you know. Terribly sad. Makes him say all sorts of things that aren't true. "Your brother led us to very specific locations on this property," Marcus said, stepping forward. "Locations where we expect to find evidence. Physical evidence that your lawyers won't be able to explain away." For the first time, something flickered in Jonathan's eyes. Not fear exactly, but calculation. The look of a man reassessing his options. "I'd like to call my attorney," Jonathan said. "You can call from the federal building," Morris replied, producing handcuffs. "Jonathan Rhodes, you're under arrest. You have the right to remain silent." As Morris read the Miranda rights, two agents moved forward to restrain Jonathan. He didn't resist, but he kept his eyes locked on Marcus. "You think you've won?" Jonathan said quietly. "You think this ends with me in handcuffs. But you have no idea how deep this goes. How many people I've protected over the years. How many powerful individuals would rather see this case disappear than come to trial." "Is that a threat?" Marcus asked. "It's reality," Jonathan replied as the handcuffs clicked shut. "I've spent 35 years making sure certain truths stayed buried. Do you really think you can dig them all up?" "We already have," Marcus said. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper only Jonathan could hear. "Your brother gave us everything. The ravine location, the cottage, and something else you didn't know about. Before Vanessa died, she hid backup copies of her evidence. We found them. All the offshore accounts, all the names, all the deals. Everyone you paid off, everyone you protected, everyone who helped you build your empire on corruption and blood. They're all going down with you." It was a bluff. They hadn't found any hidden evidence yet. But Marcus watched Jonathan's face carefully, looking for the tell. There, a slight twitch at the corner of his mouth, a brief widening of the eyes. Jonathan believed it, which meant the evidence existed somewhere. "Take him," Marcus said to the agents. As they led Jonathan Rhodes to a waiting vehicle, Marcus turned to the forensic teams. "Start with the cottage on the eastern edge of the property, then the ravine Julian described. I want every inch of this estate searched. Vanessa Reed is here somewhere, and we're bringing her home today." The search took 6 hours. They found the cottage first, abandoned, weathered by time but still standing. Inside, luminol revealed bloodstains on the floor that had soaked through the wood 35 years ago. Vanessa's blood, preserved in the grain like a permanent record of violence. They found fibers that matched her clothing. They found a broken voice recorder, the tape long since destroyed, but the device itself bearing her fingerprints. Then they found the ravine. Deep in the old-growth forest where the trees blocked out the sun and the world felt ancient and untouched, they discovered the place where Jonathan and Julian had tried to erase Vanessa Reed from existence. Marcus stood at the edge while the forensic team carefully excavated the site. He didn't need to see the remains to know it was her. He could feel it, that same instinct that had haunted him for 35 years, finally confirmed. When the forensic anthropologist emerged and gave the signal, Marcus closed his eyes and said a prayer for a young woman who'd been brave enough to chase truth even when truth had teeth. "We found something else," the anthropologist called up. "A metal box, sealed, buried with the body." They brought it up carefully. A waterproof document case, corroded but intact. Inside, wrapped in plastic that had somehow survived 3 decades underground, were documents. Financial records, wire transfer receipts, photographs of Jonathan Rhodes meeting with known criminals and corrupt politicians, and a handwritten letter in Vanessa's writing. If you're reading this, I'm dead. Jonathan Rhodes killed me or had me killed because I discovered what he really is, a criminal hiding behind charity and smiles. Everything you need to prove it is in this box. Don't let him get away with this. Don't let my death be meaningless. The truth matters. Justice matters. Make sure the world knows. Marcus held the letter with shaking hands, reading her words written hours before she died. She'd known. She'd prepared. Even in death, Vanessa Reed was still fighting for truth. Before I tell you how this story ends, I need you to do something. Share this video right now. Share it because Vanessa's courage deserves to be remembered. Share it because Ellen Reed waited 35 years for this moment, and she deserves to know her daughter's sacrifice mattered. Comment below and tell me what you think Jonathan Rhodes' sentence should be. Subscribe to this channel, because there are more stories like this, more forgotten victims, more buried truths, more families still waiting. The algorithm only works if you work with it. So engage, make noise. Let the world know that justice delayed is still justice worth fighting for. The trial took 8 months. Jonathan Rhodes' lawyers tried everything, challenging evidence, questioning Julian's mental competency, attempting to suppress the documents found with Vanessa's remains. But the physical evidence was overwhelming. The testimony was damning, and when Julian Rhodes took the stand and told the jury exactly what his brother had made him do, even the most expensive lawyers couldn't erase that truth. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Jonathan Rhodes was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. He never showed remorse, never apologized. Even when the judge asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, he simply stared ahead with those cold eyes and remained silent. But Julian Rhodes, broken and dying, spent his final months in a medical prison facility writing letters to Ellen Reed, apologizing, explaining, begging for a forgiveness he knew he didn't deserve. Ellen never wrote back, but on the day Julian died, she told Marcus that she hoped he'd found peace, even if he didn't deserve it. Vanessa would have wanted that, she said. She believed in redemption, even for monsters. Marcus stood at Vanessa Reed's grave on a foggy San Francisco morning, 1 year after her remains were finally laid to rest. Ellen Reed was there, 79 years old and frail, but standing tall beside the headstone that read, Vanessa Marie Reed, 1967-1990, journalist, truth seeker forever. Some treasures are buried not in the sand, but in the heart that never gives up. Thank you, Ellen whispered, clutching Marcus's hand. Thank you for never forgetting her. Marcus couldn't speak around the lump in his throat. He'd spent 35 years chasing this ghost, and now that she was finally at rest, he felt both triumph and unbearable loss. As the fog rolled over the cemetery, Marcus placed a single pearl earring on Vanessa's grave, not the evidence that had helped convict her killer, but a new one, a memorial, a promise kept. You were right, Vanessa, he whispered to the headstone. The truth mattered, justice mattered, and I made sure the world knows.
The wind carried his words away into the San Francisco morning, and somewhere in the mist, Marcus imagined he heard a young woman's voice saying thank you. The case was closed, but Vanessa Reed's legacy, her courage, her determination, her refusal to be silenced even in death, would live forever. Some voices once awakened can never be buried again. Word count 1,000. If you love real stories that touch the heart and prove that truth always finds a way, don't forget to subscribe. Because some truths live forever in the soul, and some fights for justice are worth every single year it takes to win them. Vanessa Reed waited 35 years to be heard. Make sure her story is never forgotten.